Well, good morning, everyone, and it's so nice to have you here today in the midst of a wonderful summer break. I hope that you're doing well and that you're keeping safe. Let's get on with today's event, and I'm really pleased to present our guest today. Let me turn off my camera for a minute. You don't need to see me. We'll move along and we'll carry on. So as Stephanie mentioned, I'm Chris Ballard, CEO for I think about 9 months now with Passivhaus Canada. So I'm fairly new to the Passivhaus movement, but I have an extensive background that has dealt with high performance buildings over the years in my role as Minister of Environment and Climate Change in Ontario, Minister of Housing, and something that Her Worship Mayor Ackerman and I have in common is time on municipal council, and I'm so looking forward to our conversation today. So without further ado, I will say that what attracted me to Passivhaus was that it set standards for new and retrofit buildings that answer many of our environmental and building challenges around health, resilience, comfort, and of course, low energy. So the question we get is, who is Passivhaus? We are a membership-based, not-for-profit group. We're an advocacy organization pushing for Passivhaus standards. We are about education and capacity building. We hold national and local events. We provide members with technical services. We have staff in many cities across the country and instructors across the country as well. And I'm really pleased today to welcome here Her Worship Mayor Ackerman, who was first elected to Fort St. John Council in 2005 and became mayor in 2011. In 2016, she was named one of the top 35 most influential women in BC. She has a background in marketing, economic development, small business counseling. She's been the executive director of SciTech North and the family service director of the Salvation Army in Fort St. John. And I know she was instrumental in creating the city's first staff homeless shelter and 5-day-a-week food program. So Mayor Ackerman represents her city citizens on committees, almost too many to mention here. The list is quite extensive. So I thank her for coming on board, and in a few minutes I'll invite her to turn her camera on and we'll have a conversation. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about Passivhaus itself, Passivhaus standards. And I'm always pleased to talk about how our ancestry is Canadian. Here we have the Saskatchewan Conservation House. It was built in 1977 in Regina by Dr. Orr and his co-workers. It was funded by the Saskatchewan government when there was concern about oil supply to Canada. OPEC was flexing its muscles, and governments were looking for ways to keep citizens warm in cold winters by building better houses. Dr. Orr and his group built this house, Saskatchewan Conservation House, still stands today, still being lived in, and the DNA of this house can be found in Passivhaus building standards that are from Europe. So they truly are a global, Passivhaus building standards truly are a global building standard. There are 5 principles of Passivhaus design, and I'm going through this for folks who are new to Passivhaus. The first is that the buildings are super insulated. The second is that they have airtight construction. The third is that they are thermal bridge free. So the warm stays in, the cold stays out in the wintertime, and the reverse of that in the summertime. They have very high quality windows with solar orientation, meaning they collect the warmth of the sun in the wintertime. That's really where it gets a lot of its Passivhaus name from, the passive heating in the wintertime. And very importantly, the ventilation systems have heat recovery, and the ventilation system is really key to the health of the air inside a Passivhaus. With the building being airtight, we need to make sure that the air turns over frequently. So these are well ventilated, lots of fresh air, and the exhaust air warms the incoming air. So those are the 5 principles of passive house design. If you're interested in learning more, there's tons of information on our website and videos on our YouTube channel. So moving ahead, we have a conversation with Her Worship Mayor Lori Ackerman. And Lori, maybe I can get you to turn, we'll turn our cameras on now. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Our conversation. And I guess, you know, we have a lot of people who are government decision makers who come to me and our members all the time, and they want to know about moving ahead with high performance housing or buildings in their jurisdictions, and perhaps passive house to passive house standards. So the first question I have for you is very simple. Why passive house, and how did it find its way to Fort St. John?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. We're pretty proud of our passive house. When we created our official community plan in 2011, environmental conservation was absolutely something that that came up, and so we are a winter city. Right. We are one of 4 cities in Canada north of the 56th parallel. The other are Whitehorse, Yellowknife, and Fort McMurray. Mm-hmm. Iqaluit is considered a city because it's the capital of Nunavut. There's no such thing as bad weather. It's bad equipment, bad clothing, or bad attitude. And so when you live in a winter city, you know that having a good parka is absolutely essential to thriving and keeping an active life. And so it just made sense for us to look at a new way of constructing. And when you're trying to change the way of thinking, and I think it was Buckminster Fuller who said, quit trying to fight the existing reality. You need to create a new model and then move it forward. So we really took a chance on this and created this living laboratory that our developers and our residents can see.
Can enjoy, yeah. And I should have mentioned, I apologize, Fort St. John, it has a number of really interesting attributes. A city of about 21,000 people, but one of the things that stood out was the average age of the citizens there. 34, roughly 34 years.
31 and a half.
31 and a half. No wonder your city slogan is it's an energetic city, lots of energy. What role does that play, that age play, do you think, in driving this focus on the environment?
Well, so there's always the good, the bad, and the ugly with every attribute within a municipality. But so I should say also that what attracts a lot of people up here is the opportunity for well-paying jobs. We are BC's energy capital. We have access to every form of energy here except tidal. We are in the heart of the Montney Shale Basin. Every molecule of natural gas that will be liquefied and exported in British Columbia comes from our region. So, and 7 kilometers from my downtown, I have a hydroelectric dam being built by BC Hydro. So my residents understand what's behind the thermostat, what's behind the light switch, and what's behind the plug-in. They get it right from day one, where they're out there working on these resources to get it to the end user. And so when they can see that there's opportunities for innovation, they bring that forward. And when we do our public consultation with our community, when we do public participation with them, they bring this out and they talk about the opportunities. In fact, I'm going to see another innovator when I'm finished with this call. There's innovations from the field that are coming out. And so moving forward in a few of our projects, including our micro hydro project that we have, just made sense.
Right, well, that's good. And the so you have a young group of people living in the community. As you said, they're well aware of where our energy comes from, how it's produced. but still at the same time, they're also looking for innovation in building. They're looking for high performance buildings. And you said about wearing a parka in the wintertime. I love that that analogy when it comes to Passive House. We often hear from some of our folks that there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices. I'm going to add that attitude to that as well, I think, in the future. So all is good. So were the citizens, was it the citizens who brought Passive House to your attention, or was this something that you became aware of?
Yeah, so we hired an energy manager on staff.
Yeah.
And it started with a partnership, a short-term partnership with BC Hydro, because we negotiated a community measures agreement with them. And just prior to getting that, we talked about, if you're really going to walk that walk, then you need to really put some skin in the game. So we hired an energy manager who brought some innovative ideas to us. And building a passive house from a municipal level, well, I can tell you that there was a healthy dose of naivety, right? It costs more to build upfront. And when people look at just the upfront costs, then yeah, it'll scare you away. But what we have found through having this living lab in our community, that it is the operational costs that diminish. And so when we speak to the province about having affordable housing, it's talking about being able to afford the monthly bills. And really it is about building in a way that your monthly utility bills are negligible. This particular house, a 30-day carbon footprint, BC average is 35 pounds. This is down to 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's significant. So the city decided to build to Passive House standards. What were some of the challenges you faced? Were there political challenges? Was there pushback from folks who said maybe it cost too much, you should stick with traditional build? I'm thinking of anyone who works in government who's watching right now and who is thinking about moving in the Passive House direction. What advice can you give them?
Well, you're going to get all of the above, all of that pushback. There's people who just do not understand what the end goal is. And I think it's the role of council as policymakers, decision makers, to keep their eye on the prize. And that's your end goal is to create, in this case, we wanted to create an example. And everyone sets an example. It's whether it's a good example or a bad example that you're creating. So we learned some lessons. We learned that municipalities are not good developers. We learned quite a few things in that way. But what we also, coming out the other end, having this lab where developers, Passive House Canada has come and done seminars in our Passive House. The last few years, we've been offering it as the University of Northern British Columbia's Community Development Institute office here in town. So it is left open as a living lab so that we can have people go through and take a look at how the HVAC system, the mechanical system works and how it's different. And the beauty about living in an area that we live in, I can take easily 70% of my population and they understand construction. Right. And when they take a look at the makeup of that wall, they go, okay, that's a no-brainer. That's wearing the right parka to work in February, right? So they get it. It just makes sense. You just have to present it to them. And so we have this passive house, but we also have the 50-unit passive style apartment that we negotiated with BC Hydro for the building of the dam.
Right, right. I'm going to turn the presentation back on because I think that's the slide that we used in your introduction. Let me go back here. Is this the?
Yeah, the top one.
Right, the top one. So talk to us about this top building. This is the BC Hydro funded project.
Yes, and so because BC Hydro is a provider of electricity and not housing. It's actually BC Housing that built this.
Okay.
And there was, it wasn't always easy, but we stuck by our goal. We are BC's energy capital. We want to showcase how to live appropriately in the north in Canada, and so we really stuck to our guns on this one. It's a beautiful building. It's really gorgeous. It's got I believe it's the largest square footage in Canada, but because it's got 2 and 3 bedroom units, there's only 50 units in it.
Right. And it is, and people can go online and find more pictures, more details about this building, but it's absolutely spectacular. You know, the irony isn't lost on me that here you are, as you said at the very beginning, the center of energy for British Columbia, and yet, you know, this abundance of energy, really, people should just be able to turn their thermostat up because you know, there's so much energy around you. But and yet, the city has made this conscious decision that the most appropriate use of that energy is to be low energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And because it's important. I'm a firm believer that as a resource municipality, I mean, we started here with the fur industry, and then went to agriculture, and then to forestry, and then petroleum products. There are significant opportunities right across Canada that we can tap into while not diminishing our grandchildren's opportunity to do the same thing. Right. We rely on energy. Our entire world relies on energy. If we didn't have the electrical plug-in that we have right now, we would not be having this conversation. This pandemic would be totally different. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to sit down and have some really pragmatic conversations about how we use the energy, because I've said to people, this entire region in Northeast British Columbia is about 70,000 people. We are not producing, processing, and shipping natural gas for us. We're doing it for the end users, and people don't understand what they're using energy for. My residents get it right from the resource to the thermostat or the plug-in or the light switch. They get it. So it's about sharing our story that's important, and understanding how you can back off a little bit on that usage. How can we save some of those resources for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren? That's, I think, what is important. Yeah,
it's very interesting, given you know, given some of the tensions that exist in other places in Canada, where an assumption is made that if it is a resource-based economy, that any idea of conservation is runs counter to what that community wants. But clearly, Fort St. John doesn't believe that, because you're walking the talk.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, just talking about some other initiatives that that Fort St. John has done back in about 2006, our water usage was about 4 million cubic meters, and our population was about 17.5, and then 10 years later, our population is well over 20,000. But because of a water program that we put in place, our water usage dropped to 14.2 million cubic meters. So it's innovative. And I can tell you, as a municipal decision maker, you are going to get thrashed. Right. That's a reality, but you got to stay focused on the end goal. You've just got to.
Right. And how do you communicate with people about what those end goals are? Because these are different than talking about paving roads or putting playgrounds in. How do you talk about energy usage or water conservation?
So it's not easy, and I probably drink way more coffee than I should, but I really offer to, yeah, I know, mine is considerably bigger. I'm always going out and having coffee or conversations with people, and it's about that face-to-face, hearing their story and listening to them. And quite often, and as a former municipal councillor, Chris, you probably understand this. A lot of times they just want to talk to somebody because they're angry about something else. And so this just happens to hit their airwaves. And so I hear what they're saying, and if they've got children or grandchildren, and you start to relate this generational shift, and especially with resource industries, you cannot compare a sawmill of today to a sawmill of 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so if you're talking to someone who's in a resource industry, you just start to relate how innovation has allowed our industries to leave a lighter footprint. And Canadians are absolute rock stars at our resources. And I don't think that we appreciate it enough. I don't think that we are proud for doing this enough. We are a resource nation. We've got a lot of other industries that have spun off as a result of it, and we just really need to focus on it.
Right, right. So getting out there, talking with folks, having a group of base of citizens who understand energy and are, by their very nature, innovators. Those are all really positive things to have. And some of us in municipalities and other parts of Canada are probably drooling a little bit with envy that we would have such informed citizens in our communities. So what next then for Passivhaus in Fort St. John? What are some of the next things you want to see happen with high performance in general?
Yeah. So City Council has acknowledged that in order to really provide that opportunity, we need to educate and inform our developers on this opportunity. And so we've opened up the Passivhaus for seminars, etc. It was one of our local developers that got the bid to build that 50-unit Passivhaus. So that knowledge is here in the community now. We've had conversations, and I have to say no one has come forward and asked for it yet, but within our development guidelines, because of the width of the walls, it impacts the side setbacks.
Right.
If you want to still be able to provide the homeowner with the square footage, the side setbacks are going to be impacted. And of course, side setbacks are measured because of fire and that kind of stuff. So we've talked about, would we consider allowing for that side setback to shift based on some fire retardant cladding on the walls. We've talked about reorienting, because we're a grid system for streets and avenues here, like a lot of communities across Canada, shifting that grid to benefit from the sun. Like right now, if you don't have blinds in your house that block the sun, then you are up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So, because we're north of the 56. Right. So how do we take advantage of the orientation to the sun? How do we take advantage of, all of these other attributes of a Passivhaus, and making sure that we make it easier for the development community to engage in it? Yeah.
And that's so important there that people understand. There are some very simple things that simple on paper anyway, in terms of reorienting the grid to take advantage of the passive heating in the winter time. It is a fair amount of work, I know, on a municipality's part to shift those grids around and to achieve the necessary buy-in. So it sounds to me as if Fort St. John is really involved right from the grassroots up in terms of assisting people who want to build to this standard.
We are absolutely, and I think it's got a lot to do with the energy in the community. We're absolutely open to innovative approaches, and I think there was, if I'm not mistaken, a book that was written. Can't remember if it was Peter Drucker, but one of the chapters was called "Innovate or Evaporate." Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds fascinating. So it's good to hear that the 50-unit apartment building built for BC Hydro was a local contractor who got that contract to build it. That would suggest to me that you have a good pool, of talented trades and professionals who know about passive house and high performance buildings? There's not a shortage.
No, I think we probably have more than a lot of communities, per capita. We'd like to have more, but it's there's with everything, and I use the analogy of a donkey. You can use a stick or a carrot, and sometimes it's there's that combination of stick carrot, right? Yep. We are the regulator, so we could use a pretty heavy stick, but sometimes it's the stick will, the donkey will turn on you.
Right. So yeah, I absolutely understand what you mean. It's sometimes a gentle poke with a carrot is what's required. Yeah, the one of the things we find with passive house and working across the country is we're often told that there's just not a skilled workforce that can build to these standards. We're very happy that we now have online training for tradespeople, introduction to tradespeople. In fact, our next building conversations will be August the 12th with one of our instructors and one of our greatest passive house boosters, a fellow by the name of Marcel Studer. You may have met him because he has done a lot of trades training in northern communities, especially in BC, in order to train up. And we like to let people know that you can take the passive house training as a tradesperson or a professional and build to any high performance standard. It's not take our training and you'll only build to passive house, because building a high performance building, all the fundamentals are pretty much the same. We like to think that Passive House Canada and Passive House in general has the highest standards. So it's really good to hear that there's a community that's bought into it. And you've talked about some of those things. I'm thinking again of an audience of people who work in municipal government. You have an innovative approach. You have a group of citizens who perhaps are younger and more attuned to the environmental messages, but they're also well aware of energy, and as you said, where it comes from the ground right to the thermostat. And then you have a council committed to these environmental aspects, whether it be water conservation, and that was a fantastic drop, by the way. I'm very impressed by what you did. People oftentimes aren't aware that for most municipalities, the most energy they spend is moving liquids. It's not about putting diesel in trucks or heating a municipal building. It's about moving liquids. So when you reduce that water consumption, that's huge.
Huge.
And a continued involvement at the grassroots to work with builders, to work with developers, to accommodate passive house type design. Have I missed anything else that we want to pass along to folks in government?
Sure. We are building a new RCMP detachment. Unfortunately, because of the cells apparently have to be concrete. I wouldn't know. I've never been in one. We're going to net zero. So, and it's a huge investment. And if there's any provincial decision makers on the line, what they need to know is that, they keep talking about all of these, especially in our province, talking about, decreasing our footprint, but there is no return on our investment for microhydro, and there is no return on our investment in the net zero aspects of the RCMP detachment that we're building right now because of the program that they've just put in place through BC Hydro. So to convince municipalities to do this, the right hand needs to know what the left hand's doing.
Right.
And if you are truly focused on making a change, then you need to work with all orders of government in order to make sure that we are creating an environment that makes that kind of investment in decreasing our GHG realistic for we're paying property tax, right? It's not, and it's huge for municipalities to do this. So I think that's something that just want to put that in there about the RCMP detachment building and the investment that municipalities have to make.
Right, right. And I missed a topic that I wanted to touch on, and that is Fort St. John and what are your plans to address GHG reductions? Clearly through water conservation and through the promotion of high performance buildings, but what does your plan look like?
Yeah, so we're working, we've had EV plugins for a long time in the community. We're actually going through a process to just do some upgrades. They're that old, they need some upgrades. So we're looking at a project that is working right now with the Northern Development Initiative Trust and the Clean Energy Association. So we're working on that. We're working on you know, just redoing our downtown to make it more pedestrian friendly. Again, our 100th and 100th used to be the highway, and so some people still think it's the highway, and so we're completely we're investing in that to redo that. We've got a reclaimed water station that will be opening soon, and so we're taking our effluent that is not going through our microhydro project, and we'll be putting that into a higher level of filtration, and then offering that to industry for, there's a lot of gravel roads in our rural area and they need to be watered. There's no sense in using potable water for that kind of stuff. You know, and just we've updated our development guidelines to ensure that there's you know, the low flush toilets and all that kind of stuff that we put in place for our water project years ago.
Right, right. But all contribute to lower energy consumption by the municipality, and therefore helping you meet your GHG targets. So
yeah, every little bit counts.
It's amazing how it does, and we certainly talk about at Passivhaus Canada. We talk to governments of all orders, not just about Passivhaus standards for new buildings, but Passivhaus renovation standards, and working with citizens, developers, building owners to when they go to renovate, to seriously consider our EnerPhit standards, because you can achieve up to a 70% energy savings over the original building if you go to those types of standards. So Stephanie, it looks like we do have some questions. So do you want to pick a few out for the mayor?
Yeah, so the first question is, they're congratulating you on being a leader in the area. And is there an opportunity to add a fiber board insulation panel factory in the area?
Absolutely. And I can introduce you to some people. Yeah. We yes, I think that that would be a good conversation. There's we have really good forestry up here. Most of it is aspen, but we do have some conifer as well. So yeah, we have a strong forestry industry in Northeast British Columbia.
So go to the Fort St. John website. There's a button that says economic development. Click on that.
Yeah.
And or if you want to get through to the mayor's office, we're happy to help with that as well. So the answer is big yes to that.
Absolutely.
This is another local question. It said, with the save some resources philosophy and energy efficiency, is there any way to save the Peace River Valley?
Oh, I wish that was in my sphere of influence. The dam that is going in there is the third dam on the Peace, and there's absolutely some concerns, and the folks in the area would absolutely know that we had some hard negotiations with the province because of the impact that would happen on our community. So previous councils were going through some tough economic times when it was being raised in the 80s, and so this time around it was outside of our jurisdiction, outside of our sphere of influence, but we fought for our community.
And this is actually, you raised a good point, just to put on my former municipal councillor hat. I think unbeknownst to a lot of people, unless you've sat around the council table and the penny suddenly drops, that the decisions made by councils 20 years ago come back to haunt you many ways. And many of us get involved with municipal politics to change certain things, and then you get on council and realize, well, you know, there's at great cost we could change those things because of contracts and agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So just a point to raise that sometimes the decisions made 20 years ago come back to haunt us today. So that's why it's really important for everyone to get out there and vote for good municipal councillors. There's my next question.
Well, this is the last one, but it's more of a statement that one of the viewers is very happy with what you're doing, Laurie, and has asked that you share the importance of Passivhaus with the Ontario Premier and with our Prime Minister.
All righty then. Well, I'm down a couple cups of coffee today, so thank you for that. It's
I've got the numbers, you know, somewhere. I'm sure we could get you to give them a call.
Yeah. They, you know, our community was Clean Energy BC's Community of the Year in 2017,
right.
And we believe in setting an example. And just further to your previous point, Chris, we do have a policy that says any renovations in any of our city-owned facilities, we must look at some kind of energy saving, because recreational facilities eat energy. Yeah. They don't use it, they eat it. So how do we ensure that, you know, we're managing things properly? I really wish that absolutely every person who sits on a provincial, in provincial government or federal government sat at a municipal level first. Yeah, you don't get to run because you need to understand that the rubber hits the road in local government. The feds or the province come in, cut a ribbon, take all the income tax from it, and leave us to clear their roads, pick up their garbage, and provide them with water and take away their sewer, and do it all on property taxes. And so that's my rant for the day.
And it was often my rant when I was a member of provincial parliament as well. And my fellow former municipal politicians would join me in the same chorus you're talking about, that we really need to understand the challenges that municipalities face and support them, especially when they're decisions that we've made, you know, at a higher level of government, higher order of government. We make them, and then we leave the municipalities all too often to pick up the pieces. So you know, unless there's, you know, maybe you have a parting words of wisdom for us, Laurie, and then we'll get on with our day.
Sure. So, you know, when I talk about the province, it was interesting. Fort St. John is growing. From 2011 to 2016, we grew by 8.3%. We broke the national average with our growth, and it's because of our economy here. And so we're fortunate that we only hire rock stars for staff. But we actually reached out to our Ministry of Education because we've got 2 elementary schools, one that just opened about a year and a half ago, and the other one that's opening, I think, this fall. We said to them, you need to start building in Passivhaus standards. And it was like a brick wall. So we finally convinced their staff from Victoria to do a tour of our Passivhaus to understand it. And because we understand the operational costs of some of these provincial ministries. So having a Passivhaus school would allow them, especially in Northern British Columbia, to take advantage of operational savings. My mother always said, take the high road, sweetie, there's less traffic up there. But my father always said, if you've got a story to tell and you're setting a good example, you need to be in their face. So you've got to find that balance of taking the high road and being in their face all the time and staying connected and creating a network of decision makers that you can reach out to and convince that you're not crazy, you have a good idea. And so
Right.
sometimes that means walking a line that you don't like walking, but that's the only way you can get their attention.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wise words.
Thank
And
you.
and thank you very much for your belief of Passive House building standards and all of the things you're doing to reduce our nation's GHG emissions. And I think coming from the district that you do, I'm so impressed that there is this wonderful understanding and wonderful balance between energy and energy usage. So there's some good lessons there, I think, for all of us right across the country, along with that tenacity to keep your eye on the ball and just keep pushing for what you know you need to do.
Yep.
So I'll invite both of us to turn our cameras off, and I want to thank you again for what you're doing and for your time here today. And I know I've learned an awful lot. I really appreciate your time, appreciate your hard work. And appreciate what the folks of Fort St. John are doing, and look forward to a visit one day where I will drive down the age demographic. I apologize for that, but we'll make it a short visit so they can talk. Thank you very much, and
Thanks, Chris.
have a wonderful rest of the summer. It's been a delight meeting you today. Take
Thanks,
care.
Chris. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Turn my camera off, and I will carry on, folks. I have a few slides that I will get to. And thank you again for Worship Mayor Laurie Ackerman's time today, and lessons learned from the trenches, I guess, is what we could have called this. I mentioned earlier that I'm really excited on our next building conversation, August the 12th. We have Marcel Studer, who is a principal of Econ Group from BC. Anyone who's been involved in the Passive House movement across Canada probably has bumped into Marcel at one time, either as a builder, as a designer, as an instructor. He is one of our great instructors for Passive House Canada. Marcel is from Switzerland. His first career was as a tradesperson before becoming an architect. And Marcel really has been working hard with tradespeople across our country to bring them up to speed, to teach them some of the fundamentals of Passive House building. It's not that difficult. We tell people Passive House building standards are not rocket science. They're, as Mayor Ackerman was pointing out, it's all about wearing the appropriate parka in cold weather. So we'll be delighted to talk about the importance of trades training and his journey into the Passive House world. So please join us for that, August the 12th at noon EST or 9 a.m. PST. And until then, please continue to have a safe summer. I hope you get some time to relax with friends, and we will join you again August the 12th, same place, same time. Take care, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today.